the thing that I thought was the absolute worst thing to ever happen to me was definitely the most important thing at the time for me. And so it was really, really hard. Several months later, I get a call from Major League Baseball, and they asked if I would be interested in coaching South Africa to be their hitting coach for the 2000 Sydney Olympics, for the Olympic trials.
Yeah.
I fly out to Johannesburg, and I thought they were contacting me because no one else would take the job in what then was called the most dangerous city in the world. And but I took the job, and it was extraordinary. I'm still friends with that team today. Wonderful. And our bat boy was living in the tool shed of the baseball field with his mother and little brother. His name was Gift Ngupe. I'd never seen poverty before, nothing like South Africa. And his story is actually amazing. He went on to get drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates and become the first African-born player ever to play in the big leagues. Yeah. Amazing guy, Gift. And so we win the Olympic trials, go on to the Sydney 2000 Olympics. Extraordinary experience. Got to march in opening ceremonies.
All right, I am very excited to have this conversation because before this, I just saw the cover of your book and heard your name on a NFL Red Zone broadcast. Jim Murphy, how are you?
Great. Thanks so much, Stevie. Let me be here.
Yeah, well, I'm excited because I am talking with a fellow Asian, but someone who would have thought, I mean, way back at the beginning of the year, did you think your life would be what you were doing right now?
Yeah, obviously no clue. Yeah. I didn't know. You never know what God's up to.
No, yeah. And for you, a lot of times, talk to me all about your history. What do you do for a living, and how did you go about writing the book? Share a little bit with the audience.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a mental skills coach. I teach professional Olympic athletes how to have peace and confidence when they perform. So essentially develop inner strength. Yeah. I also lead inner excellence retreats around the world. And it's not just for athletes, families, executives. I do corporate retreats as well. In the retreats, people clarify their life purpose and learn inner excellence principles. And so most of my time before January 12th, when this all kind of went down, was spent coaching and leading retreats. And then, of course, as you know, January 12th, my life changed a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And were you sitting there watching the game at all, or you just and suddenly your phone started blowing up?
Yeah. So I was just actually up the road a little bit in Dallas, leading a retreat. I'm from Seattle, and I was leading an inner excellence retreat in Dallas, and I'm actually watching Penn State play Notre Dame in the bowl game that had already happened. So I was kind of watching a rerun. I hadn't seen it yet. And then I looked down at my phone and I see all these texts, and I was like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And then I found out something was going on, and then obviously my life changed.
Yeah. And here we are. AJ Brown is just a wonderful wide receiver, and have you gotten the chance to meet him?
Yeah, great guy, very gentle, humble. Nice guy.
Yeah. How did he get a hold of your book? What made him, when you asked him, what made him sit there and decide to read your book?
Yeah, so he got the book from his teammate Moro Ojomo, defensive lineman that as everyone knows, dominated the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Very good. Yeah.
And so Moro got the book from DJ Giratelli, University of Texas Athletes in Action rep here in Austin. And so Moro went to UT, and so that's where he got the book from DJ. And the whole story of what happened was really crazy. I didn't know anything about what was going on. I saw the picture in December that here was AJ Brown reading the book. I just saw the picture of him on the sideline. I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And that was the end of that. And then January 12th happened. And so I didn't know that he was reading it before every game to get centered, and then reading inner excellence after every drive to get recentered. Yeah. I had no idea. Yeah. And so, that's when everything kind of changed in my life.
For him, what is it about that book that centers him? What is he reading the same chapter over and over again, or different things like that? What is it, what you're reading really allow him to focus?
Well, inner excellence is about this idea of being selfless and therefore fearless. And for AJ Brown, his position as a wide receiver, it's a very physically dangerous position, because you got to go over the middle, and you could get severely injured when you're, especially if the quarterback throws it too far in front of you. You got to reach out, and you're vulnerable, and the guy takes your head off. So it's a position where you have to have a lot of courage and to be fully present, and you can't be worried about what's going to happen, because if you're thinking about that, you're going to drop the ball. And so he's one of the best in the game, and so he found inner excellence was a way for him to kind of recenter. Because we talk a lot about, in the book, it talks a lot about like the samurai, for example, and how they have to be prepared to die every day and not be attached to their life. And so in our lives, it's so easy to get attached to results and circumstances and these things that you think you need and really want. and that we don't know if they're the best things for us or not, but we can easily get attached to them. And like if you're a football player, wanting to get catches and touchdowns and all that sort of thing. And so I think that book helped him get centered and have that, live more of that selfless and therefore fearless life.
What made you write the book?
Well, my dream was always to be a professional athlete, a superstar playing the NFL or NBA or Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got drafted, it was a dream come true. But I played 5 years in the minors and got injured and had to retire.
Wow.
And so
what position did you play in baseball?
I was an outfielder.
Yeah.
So I played all 3 outfield positions.
Yeah.
And I played free safety in college in football.
Wow. Okay. And what was your sport that you loved the most? Was it baseball?
It was just whatever season it was.
Okay.
Football's more intense, and so I love the intensity of that. And kind of like AJ, I'm also, not to compare myself to AJ, but I'm also very try to be gentle and laid back. And so for me, the playing free safety, it's a very heavy contact hitting, trying to hit someone as hard as you possibly can. And also on defense, I was the guy that called out the plays on the defense or the formations.
Really?
And so I had to yell as loud as I can. So 2 things that are not socially acceptable in public is to hit someone as hard as you can and yell as loud as you can.
Yeah.
And being a very quiet guy, these are 2 things I was called upon to do. So it was really interesting dynamic.
Where'd you play college football?
I actually played at the University of British Columbia in Canada. After 8 years of not playing, I was 24, I think.
Yeah.
And so, it was an amazing experience. Loved Canada. I became a Canadian. So,
and then this book, how did it come about then?
Well, it's kind of a unique story. After my career ended, I got asked to coach a high school baseball team. I was driving a truck for FedEx in downtown Seattle, and had no interest in coaching. Just had no idea if I would be any good, could help anybody, and would enjoy it. And our team went undefeated, and so it was an inner city all boys school, O'Day in Seattle. And then I was like, I kind of love this coaching thing. So I went and got a master's in phys ed, University of British Columbia, coaching science actually. And my undergrad was psychology. And I was going to get a job teaching PE in a high school in the States and then get a job coaching the baseball team, win a championship, get a job in university, do the same thing, get a job in the pros and work my way up through the minors. That was kind of my long-term plan.
Yeah.
Instead, I met this coach who in grad school, I was a personal trainer to pay for grad school. And he said, let's go for a job in pro baseball right out of grad school by getting to know the people that can hire you in pro baseball. Yeah. So I sent a snail mail letter to every major league team, to their GM and their field manager. And many of the viewers today may not know what snail mail is.
Yes.
So in the old days, we had these envelopes where you put a stamp on it, you actually write on it, and you put it in the mailbox. So that's what I did, send 60 of those. And so I did 39 interviews. It was amazing.
They actually responded.
Yeah.
Really?
And I never would have done it on my own. The coach is the one said, Jim, you can do this. And I just didn't believe they would talk to me. And I was talking to these legends of the game. So it was an incredible experience for me. And I got a job with the Texas Rangers 2 weeks after graduation.
Very good.
So it was another Jim Murphy pro baseball player, my lifelong dream. And then I get injured and lose it. So then I felt in my mind, Jim Murphy, nobody. And then I get the job with the Texas Rangers. Okay, I'm somebody again. Jim Murphy, pro baseball coach.
What was your first job with the Texas Rangers?
Pardon?
What was your job with the Texas Rangers?
I was assistant coach for a minor league team in Savannah, Georgia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so just like Major League Baseball players, they work their way up through the minors. Coaches do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I'm on my way to coaching the Major League team, being the Major League manager and winning the World Series. And so that was my plan. And then I quit 6 months later in tears. And it was really hard. I felt like a failure. It just wasn't a good fit. At the time, I just couldn't believe, all I could see was I couldn't do it. I couldn't make it work. It just was not a fit for me. And I felt like a failure. Now I see that God was working it the whole time. And I had no idea. The thing that I thought was the absolute worst thing to ever happen to me was definitely the most important thing at the time for me. And so it was really, really hard. Several months later, I get a call from Major League Baseball, and they asked if I would be interested in coaching South Africa to be their hitting coach for the 2000 Sydney Olympics, for the Olympic trials. Yeah. I fly out to Johannesburg, and I thought maybe they were contacting me because no one else would take the job in what then was called the most dangerous city in the world. And but I took the job, and it was extraordinary. I'm still friends with that team today. Wonderful. And our bat boy was living in the tool shed of the baseball field with his mother and little brother. His name was Gift Ngupe. I'd never seen poverty before, nothing like South Africa. And his story is actually amazing. He went on to get drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates and become the first African-born player ever to play in the big leagues. Yeah. Amazing guy, Gift. And so we win the Olympic trials, go on to the Sydney 2000 Olympics. Extraordinary experience. Got to march in opening ceremonies. Nelson Mandela becomes the first democratically elected president in centuries, and that was 1994. And so I went there in 1999, and so Sydney 2000 Olympics. So it was really an amazing honor to be a part of this South African team. And Nelson Mandela came and spoke to us, and so that was an incredible honor.
Yeah.
And then we had one of the biggest upset victories in Olympic baseball history, and so just that experience was incredible. So after the Olympics, now what am I going to do with my life? I've always had this obsessive personality that I always thought, I'm going to be a superstar when I grow up. And I always thought it was to be this Major League Baseball player, NFL player, and that every girl is going to want to be with me and every guy's going to want to be me. And I'm going to be this, on the cover of magazines and rich and famous. And I thought that was the best possible life. Now I realize since then that the best possible life is one where you're your true self and feeling fully alive and connected to God. And so after the Olympics, this extraordinary experience, but what am I going to do next? So I went back to being a personal trainer that I was doing in college to pay for school. And then after a few years of that, I was getting restless. And then I was just like, what am I doing with my life? I just really I felt like I was destined to do something extraordinary. And so I got rid of give away over half my possessions, including my television. At the time, this is before streaming. And I moved to the desert to live a life of solitude. Wow. There was this, back in the day, a lot of you younger people probably don't know, but they had screensavers, these letters that go across the screen that would protect the screen from wearing out, I guess. And so oftentimes they're quotes. And so my quote that time was, "Those destined for greatness must first walk alone in the desert." And so I went there literally to do that.
And you remind me of Elijah as well, too.
Thank you. And so it's not like I was living in a teepee. I was in the outskirts of Northwest Tucson. But it was a very lonely time. Like my first or second New Year's, I was alone in an empty house, and I went outside to go. I heard a noise. I'm writing in my journal, and I go outside and I see fireworks, and that's when I realized it was New Year's. I just didn't know what day it was because I wasn't socializing. I was trying to live a life of solitude to find something that I could devote my life to, something that I was willing to live and die for, which I did not have. And so when I was there, I decided to become a personal coach to pro baseball players and teach them how to have peace and confidence under pressure. And my first two athletes did amazing. And so I thought, okay, this is going to be my vocation. And so I thought, I'm going to put together a little manual for future clients. And so I called up a sports psychologist, and I asked him, how can an Olympic athlete train for 4 years for an event that may last less than a minute and have peace and confidence in that situation? And similarly, how can a Major League Baseball player in the World Series, Game 7, bottom of the ninth, down by one, bases loaded, full count, 2 outs. How can that guy have peace and confidence with so much out of his control? And it brought more questions than answers. So I called another psychologist and another, and I spent 5 years, 50 to 60 hours a week for 5 years straight. Wow. Trying to answer that question. So that became the book Inner Excellence.
Wow. It's like a lot of times a preacher, when I go up there right before I become preaching and you're sitting there, I hope I don't forget everything. You have butterflies in your stomach. You're sitting there. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I really need to relook at my notes again. How do you do all those different things? Wow. Okay. Yeah. And then from that point on, you wrote the book, and then now you're also doing spiritual retreats. Are you speaking at churches, speaking at conferences, all of that?
Yeah, so it was actually, what happened after that was quite interesting as well. I get it through a series of miracles. I get a New York City literary agent. I get a major publisher, McGraw-Hill. It gets into Barnes & Noble and bookstores around the world. So this is 2009.
Okay. So McGraw-Hill published your book?
Initially,
that's pretty good. Yeah.
Thank you. So it was wonderful. And so I had spent my life savings in this 5 years, 2.5 years in the desert, 5 years of total research and writing. I spent my life savings, and I was $90,000 in debt at the end. I kind of put all my eggs in one basket.
I know the feeling. When I started Research Global, I was in major debt, but I totally understand what you're saying.
Okay, perfect. So now it's February 2010. The book's in bookstores around the world, but I'm falling apart.
2010. Okay.
Yeah, Vancouver Winter Olympics was going on in my hometown back in Vancouver, BC, and I'm in Denver, Colorado, falling apart.
Yes.
And my mind was thinking, okay, you've put all your eggs in one basket. You're $90,000 in debt. Yeah, the books in bookstores around the world, but you've got no money to hire someone to market the book for you. You don't know how to do marketing, and you don't like telling people about the book. Like I would be, wherever I went, I would meet people brand new, like, what do you do? I wouldn't even tell them that I just published a book that I spent 5 years full time. I wouldn't even mention it. I just wasn't, I'm still not trying to promote myself. And so it's just not my thing. So I thought, this isn't a good way to not a good marketing plan. And if no one hears about the book, no one's going to buy the book. And if no one buys the book, Barnes & Noble will pull it off their shelves. And this could happen in a matter of weeks. 5 years of all this work and money. And in a matter of weeks, Barnes & Noble could pull it off their shelves. And if that happens, I'll be a total failure. This is what I'm saying in my mind. And when, we're created for relationship. And when you isolate yourself, you're in danger of succumbing to the negative thoughts that we all have. And so my mind started to spiral out of control, and I just couldn't see any way that this was not going to happen, where Barnes & Noble was going to pull it off the shelves and I was going to be a total failure. And if I was a failure, I wrote the book so I could coach professional athletes. But I thought, well, what professional athlete is going to hire a failure to coach them? That would be stupid. And so I was like, no professional athlete will hire you if you're a failure. So you're going to have to get a regular job. But this was 2009, 2010 during the recession. And I thought, no one's hiring failures. You're going to die alone in the street. You're not going to get a job anywhere, not at the corner or local mini mart or 7-Eleven or anywhere. You're going to die alone, homeless in the street. That was my mind telling me these lies, spinning out of control, spiraling. And I was getting to the point where it was almost like fall to my knees, mental breakdown. And like I said, 5 years of relative isolation. And that's what can happen when you isolate yourself like that. And so I called my friend and said, tell me what to do. And he said, find a homeless person and help him. And so I look around the corner, and there happened to be this guy with a grocery cart full of stuff, wearing these holy shoes, playing a full-size harp. It's, kind of odd, downtown Denver. And so I sat next to him and listened to him play this beautiful music. I leave, and I look at my wallet, and I had $100, which I must have taken a cash advance out because most of my credit cards were maxed out. So I took all the money and I put it in his bag, and I left to go back to where I stayed to run on the treadmill, just to try and breathe, just to get through the day. I come back to that same area several hours later, and I'm sitting in the Starbucks, and I can't do anything. It's way too much anxiety. I'm just trying to get through the day. So I'm just sitting there staring off into the abyss. And then the homeless harpist walks in, and he walks past me, stops in his tracks, and he turns around and says, "Are you the guy that gave me that money?" And I said, yes. And he leaves, and he comes back with a box of chocolates and a card that he made, and a bracelet that he made, and a card. He gave all three to me. Now, when I was writing the book, I asked this girl from my church, I said, can you read this book and make sure it lines up with the Bible? And she reads it and said, have you ever heard of the word Zoe? And I said, no. She said, it's a Greek word in the Bible. It means fullness of life. It's in the Bible a lot. In John 10:10, I came to bring you life abundantly. I think that's what your book is about. And I said, yes. My whole life I'm obsessed about being successful and wanting these successful results and circumstances so I can have everyone love me. When what I've always really wanted is to feel fully alive. And when you're fully alive, that's when you can do great things and let everything else be added to you. So I started to orient the book around pursuing this fullness of life and let everything be added to you. And so I grabbed the book. So now I'm in the Starbucks, and this guy hands me this card, and I open it up, and it says, thank you so much for caring for me. No one's cared for me like that before. Love, Zoe. His name was Zoe. I said, your name was Zoe? And he said, yeah. And I said, do you know what your name means? He said, no. I said, well, it means fullness of life. I spent 5 years writing and researching a book about this. So I grabbed the book and I wrote, dear Zoe, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful music with me today. You don't know what that meant to me. Love, Jim. I give it to him, and I never see him again. So this is February 2010. This is where it starts to get a little interesting. 6 weeks later, I walk into a friend of a friend's house in North Vancouver, BC. And I never met this guy. And he starts to tell me, he said, you're a coach, aren't you? And I said, yeah. And he said, you're banging your head against the wall. You're not getting anywhere. And you're always there obsessing about some goal, and you're never here in the moment. And it's exactly how I felt. And then this gal in the house walks over to me, and she drew a picture of a kite and handed it to me and said, what's wrong with this picture? I said, well, your kite doesn't have a string. And she said, yeah, that kite is you. A slight breeze will blow you away. And so it's exactly how I felt. And so then they said, can we pray for you? And then my philosophy has always been, always accept free prayer. If it's free, like definitely go for it. So I said, yes, you can pray for me. So they prayed for me. They said, you should come back to our Bible study tonight. And it turns out that he was a pastor. And I go to their Bible study, and I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. Like I had a million things to do. It all had to be done yesterday. And I had no resources or understanding how to do it. And so much anxiety and stress. And I felt God telling me that night, there's nothing you've ever done or could ever do would change how much I love you. And the stress completely fell off. It went from extreme anxiety to extreme peace. I've never felt that ever before since the extreme shift. And it was April 1st, 2010, a day I'll never forget, but it was no joke. But a year and a half later, I had a very similar thing happen to me. I was at my friend's house, and I was about to leave in North Vancouver, BC. And his mother calls in on Skype from India. And I said, tell her I said hello as I'm walking out the door. She said, oh, my friend wants to talk to Jim. And I said, oh, okay. So I sit in front of the laptop, and then this lady says, God wanted me to tell you a couple of things. Everything that you've been going through has been training for you. God's going to bring people from all over the world to work with you. It's going to happen soon, and you're going to know it's from God.
Really?
Very specific.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay. And so a few weeks later, things started to happen. I hear a voice. I'm sleeping. It's early in the morning. And my eyes are closed. I hear a voice, and it says, Jimmy, you ready? Things are going to happen fast. And I lived alone, so I assumed it was God. So I said, yes, Lord, I'm ready. And then as soon as I said that, alarm goes off, and I'm like, oh, maybe he's serious. A few weeks later, I get a call from a caddy in Dublin, Ireland, Jude O'Reilly. He said, I read Inner Excellence. Can you talk to my boss? He could really use your help. He's a Swedish golfer, Henrik Stenson. Fly out to Sweden, start to work with Henrik. A few weeks later, I get a call from Tiger Woods' coach. He said, I read Inner Excellence. Can you talk to my client, Hunter Mahan? Fly to California. I meet with Hunter and Sean Foley, and then start to work with Hunter. A few weeks after that, I get a call from the CEO of Yum Brands, which is Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, KFC, 1 point something million employees. He said, I read Inner Excellence. I'd like to work with you. So I start to work with David Novak, and then he sends the book to some executives in Europe. I start to work with some of them. I said, hey, you should come to Vancouver and do an Inner Excellence retreat. We're going to clarify your life purpose and teach you Inner Excellence principles and give you these tools that you can use the rest of your life. And so he flies to Vancouver and he said, this was amazing. Can you bring this same retreat back to my leadership team in Europe? Yeah. So I do. And I was really nervous. It was the head of KFC Spain, KFC Germany, and I'd never done a corporate retreat before. These 9 leaders and me. And I remember that night before it all started, I was so nervous, but God totally blessed it. Extraordinary. One of the best weeks of my life, I think. And because, clarifying your life purpose and just learning these principles, we bonded so much. And I'm still friends with most of the people in that retreat that happened like 12 years ago. And so in a year and a half later, Henrik Stenson wins the FedEx Cup. Hunter Mahan wins a PGA Tour event within a few months, and he wins the World Championship a few months after that. And the majority of my clients, their first year together, have the best year of their careers or the best year in the last 5 years. I've been doing Inner Excellence retreats and around the world ever since, and coaching professional Olympic athletes as well ever since. And now I get to hang out with you.
Yeah. Wow. And then the book came, and now how has your life changed? Is it more speaking engagements, more interviews, or how is life looking like?
Did I tell you what happened the Sunday afternoon of the book?
No.
I got to tell you this part. So January 1 to 11th, the book had sold, Inner Excellence had sold maybe 2 or 3 copies a day. So 25 books in January. The week of January 12th, it sells 100,000 or so. And so to give you an idea.
McGraw-Hill's happy.
Well, McGraw-Hill, that's interesting you say that. McGraw-Hill published the initial version. I bought the rights to it. I self-published in 2020.
Oh, you did? Okay.
So it wasn't really a big seller initially. And even Inner Excellence, the AJ Brown version, was not a big seller until he sees it. Yeah. And so 100,000 copies and over 200,000 the first 3 weeks. And so it goes on the New York Times bestseller list, becomes a #1 bestseller. And then, I signed with an agency, and then start doing everything changes. But what happened on that Sunday was really, really amazing. I'm wandering around. So my life was really slow at that point. My mom was dying. Actually, she died 4 days later. And it's more joy than sorrow, though, because she was suffering and she was 91. And so a lot of answers to prayer. But it was a somber time on January 12th. And business was slow. And I actually hadn't paid off my credit cards that month. And so that was first time in several years that hadn't happened. And then combined with like business slow, credit finances weren't rolling in, and mom dying. And so it was just kind of a somber day. And I'm all alone downtown Dallas. And I just written this book about the Christian life called The Best Possible Life, How to Live with Deep Contentment, Joy, and Confidence no matter what. And that just came out in November. And then I'm kind of lonely, and I look up at this skyscraper, and now I see it was God asking me. At the time, I had no idea. It's just a thought came to my mind. The question was, would you rather own that skyscraper straight out for whatever hundreds of millions of dollars it's worth, or would you rather have understood and written The Best Possible Life, a book about the Christian life? And I looked at that skyscraper and I thought, no, I'd rather own and understand the book. And so I thought, well, at least you got that. Life is a little bit somber right now. And then 3 hours later, everything changed. And then I'm in Philadelphia a couple days later. This guy in the street asked me for money. And I had no money in my wallet. So I go to the bank, try to get money out of the bank, and try to get $300 out. And it said insufficient funds, 200 insufficient funds, 100, give me some money. I give him some money. A week or two later, my mortgage payment bounces and my checking account's overdrawn.
Wow.
And so this all happens. And then the whole A.J. Brown thing happens and my life completely changes.
Yeah. What does life look like now? I know a lot of times you've brought in some people to help you out and all this stuff. How have you had to manage, or how different is it compared to before? It probably is a lot different, but
yeah, in many ways, I think of it as like the pastor of a church. Like there's a lot of responsibility when you're given a lot, and so I've been given a lot of resources now, and I feel there's a great responsibility to share this message of God's love to everybody. And so it's really exciting, but also kind of daunting sometimes, and but more exciting than ever, and just realizing like my whole life has been training for this. And so I shared earlier that I think in the hardest times of your life, because the first principle of inner excellence is that everything is here to teach you and help you. It's all working for your good.
And good or bad, anything good or bad in your life. Yeah.
And so I'm looking back, and now I see that lady said that this has all been training for you. I thought God just meant like that season. Now I look back and I say, oh my gosh, everything in my life has been training me for this moment in my life. And so that part's been extraordinary.
Yeah. You look back at the training of your life, the times of solitude where you were sitting there in solitude, the times when you were trying to figure out how to make ends meet, and all of those things have all prepared you to where you are right now. Wow, that's so exciting.
Yeah, thank you.
Where do you see it going? Do you see still more training, coaching, more retreats, all of those different things? Or where do you think about that?
Well, we got actually something coming up in April. I haven't made a big announcement about it, but I have a charity called the Inner Excellence Freedom Project, where we work with Youth with a Mission, YWAM, and we build a house in a weekend, and we also get an Inner Excellence retreat. So it's a way to get an Inner Excellence retreat for $750, which is the regular prices. Before January 12th was a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And so, and obviously now it's a little different, but the price is still the same for this April 24th, 28th retreat in Mexico. We build a house for a family in Mexico along with the family, and then you get an Inner Excellence retreat as well. So continue to work with YWAM and do more of these retreats. I'm going to Spain on Monday to look at getting a retreat center there as well.
Very good.
And so the purpose of the retreat center in Spain is also to share God's love, wisdom, and courage with not just athletes and leaders, but also the local community and people living below the poverty line and things like that.
Wonderful. How does I know we were talking about you're part Japanese as well too. Were you born? Have you ever been to Tokyo? Did you live in Tokyo at all during your time?
So yeah, thank you. My mom is full Japanese, and in Inner Excellence we talk about the samurai and her lineage. I've been to Japan about I'd say 5 or 6 times. Definitely one of my favorite countries in the world. It's just so much more my personality. Focused on the group, and obviously the food is world class, if not the best in the world. And I love Japan.
Very good. Thank you so much for just taking the time out. I mean, you and I are just meeting each other for the first time. You're just hearing, wait, what is this Resource Global? And who are you? And where are you? But for us to be able to do all these different things. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor.
Yeah. Hey, where can people find you?
So we have Inner Excellence. Inner Excellence, Jim Murphy is my Inner Excellence name. And then innerexcellence.com is the book. Right now, the book is you can find it on Amazon, but also barnesandnoble.com and various retailers like that. There's a big launch coming up April 29th in America. You're going to find it in Barnes & Noble and most places where you can buy books. And then May 1st in the UK and the Commonwealth, you'll find it in bookstores around the world.
Very good. Thank you so much.